The people who move through shortages most calmly usually are not luckier, richer, or more disciplined than everyone else. They are simply holding part of their money in a different form. Not as cash in a wallet, but as food that will still be there, water treatment that still works, batteries that still hold power, and everyday supplies that become hard to replace the moment pressure hits the system. That matters, because most people are taught to think the problem is personal. If grocery costs rise, if shelves thin out, if basic supplies suddenly feel expensive, it must mean they planned poorly. But that is not really what is happening. Stores are built around just-in-time inventory. Prices change fast. Panic buying spreads even faster. And the most ordinary items often disappear first, because everybody assumes they will always be there until one day they are not. Real preparation is not fear. It is not a bunker fantasy. It is not wasting money on flashy gear that looks impressive and solves very little. It is a calmer move than that. It is recognizing which basics protect your household, which ones vanish first, and which ones give you options when everybody else is reacting late. That is why the smartest households focus on practical essentials with a long shelf life, low waste, and multiple uses. The pattern repeats again and again. The quiet items matter most, and once you start seeing that pattern, a lot of consumer traps stop working on you. The first place that pattern shows up is with the least glamorous food on the shelf, and also one of the strongest foundations you can build: rice and beans. Rice and beans are easy to dismiss because they look ordinary. That is exactly why they matter. In a real disruption, ordinary wins. This pairing gives you calories, protein, satiety, and flexibility without demanding refrigeration, complicated cooking, or a huge upfront cost. Rice carries the energy. Beans bring protein, fiber, and staying power. Together, they form one of the most dependable pantry combinations available. And the reason experienced households keep coming back to them is not nostalgia, it is math. A large bag of rice can still deliver dozens of meals at a cost many packaged convenience foods cannot touch. Dry beans remain one of the cheapest ways to add real nutritional value to a meal. While people chase expensive freeze-dried kits and overpriced novelty foods, these staples keep proving the same point. The most protective purchases are often the least exciting to look at. There is another reason they matter. Prices on staple grains and legumes do not need to spike dramatically to create pressure. A steady rise year after year quietly turns what used to feel cheap into something people start rationing. That is how households lose control, without noticing at first. The control shift is simple. Buy these before you feel forced to. Store them correctly in airtight containers, buckets, or Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. Rotate what you use. Build gradually if needed. When packed well, they can last for decades. That turns a basic grocery purchase into long-term protection. And once food is covered, the next pressure point becomes impossible to ignore, because your body can stretch calories far longer than it can stretch safe water. Water has a way of exposing bad planning fast. You can simplify meals, you can eat less variety, you can make do for a while with plain food. But if your water source becomes unsafe, the timeline changes immediately. That is why water purification tablets deserve far more attention than they get. They are not exciting. They do not photograph well. They are not something people brag about. But they solve one of the most critical problems in any disruption: turning questionable water into something safer to drink. A small bottle can treat a surprising amount of water, costs very little compared with most preparedness products, and takes up almost no space. That is rare value. This is also where the market plays tricks on people. Most shoppers think of water only as bottled water on a store pallet. That works until everybody else has the same idea. Then shelves clear out in hours, prices jump, and people start making risky choices because they waited too long. Water tablets shift control back to you. They give you options beyond whatever is left in the aisle. They are especially useful when storms, boil notices, flooding, or infrastructure issues hit at once. Keep them sealed, dry, and protected from heat, and they usually hold up for years. That does not mean they replace all water planning. It means they close a dangerous gap. And that is the larger lesson here. The most protective item is often not the one that looks biggest. It is the one that keeps a single failure from becoming a crisis. And once water is handled, the next weak point in most emergency food setups shows up quickly. Too many calories, not enough protein. A lot of pantries look full until you ask one question. Where is the protein? That is where canned protein earns its place. Tuna, chicken, salmon, Spam, sardines, canned beef, when you can find it at a reasonable price, all of it serves the same role. It gives your body something substantial when fresh meat is gone. Refrigeration is unreliable, and stress is already high. This matters more than people think. In a disruption, households often end up with plenty of filler calories. Rice, pasta, crackers, cereal, snack foods, instant noodles. Those can carry energy, but they do not always carry strength. Protein helps maintain muscle, satiety, and mental steadiness. And when meals become repetitive, protein also makes basic foods feel more complete. It is also one of the clearest examples of replacing a fragile supply chain with something stable. Fresh meat depends on refrigeration, transport, constant stocking, and a functioning store system. Canned protein does not. It sits quietly on a shelf, often for years, waiting until you need it. And there is the pricing angle. Fresh meat has become one of the fastest ways for grocery budgets to lose control. Small increases at the pound level add up quickly. Shelf-stable protein gives you a buffer against that pressure. The control shift here is practical. Buy what you already know you will eat. Rotate it into regular meals. Add it to rice, beans, soup, or pasta. Build a mix so you are not relying on one taste or one format. A pantry with protein is not just fuller, it is more stable. And stability matters even more when the issue is not hunger, but a small injury or illness that becomes expensive, slow, and hard to solve. One of the biggest misconceptions about emergencies is that the main danger is always something dramatic. In reality, it is often something small that gets worse because normal support systems are strained. A cut, a burn, a fever, a stomach bug, a missed refill. A pharmacy shelf that is suddenly empty. That is why medical supplies and first aid basics belong near the top of any serious list. Most people have a tiny kit somewhere and assume that covers it. Usually, it does not. A useful setup needs to handle wound care, infection prevention, pain control, fever reduction, minor burns, and basic illness support. Bandages, gauze, antiseptic, pain relievers, burn cream, cold and stomach remedies, gloves, tape, and any household-specific needs matter far more than a showroom survival kit stuffed with items you will never touch. This is another place where the system creates pressure quietly. Everyday medical supplies rise in price, then vanish quickly when demand surges. The people shopping after a storm warning are not just competing for water and bread. They are competing for fever reducers, disinfectant, and simple items that suddenly feel priceless. The control shift is organization. Build a kit that reflects your actual household. Keep it labeled, dry, and easy to access. Check dates every few months. Replace what you use. If someone in the home depends on a regular medication, keep that reality front and center. Medical readiness is not dramatic. It is what prevents small problems from taking control of the entire situation. And once health is covered, another basic layer of control comes into focus fast, because modern households do not just run on food and medicine, they run on stored power. When the lights go out, people learn very quickly which devices matter and which ones were just clutter. Flashlights matter. Radios matter. Headlamps matter. Smoke detectors matter. Some medical devices matter a lot, and many of them run on the same small foundation: batteries. AA, AAA, and 9-volt batteries are not glamorous, but they are among the first things people rush for before storms and blackouts. The pattern is remarkably predictable. Weather alerts hit, stores fill, shelves empty, and a basic pack suddenly costs much more than it did a week earlier. It is one of the clearest examples of paying for delay. The larger issue is not just the outage itself. It is what the loss of light and communication does to decision-making. Darkness creates stress. Stress leads to mistakes. A working flashlight in the right room at the right moment feels small until you do not have one. This is the kind of item people often postpone because it seems too ordinary to be urgent. But ordinary essentials are exactly what fail households first. The control shift is to treat batteries like rotation stock, not last-minute purchases. Keep common sizes organized. Use older packs first. Store them cool and dry. Build enough depth that a storm warning does not send you into a crowded store competing over the last package. Here is a good point to pause and notice the pattern. Almost none of the most protective items are impressive. They are useful. They last. They solve repeated problems, and they are easy to overlook because they feel too basic to be urgent. So ask yourself this. How many of the things in your home would still matter if the store was crowded, the power was out, and replacements were suddenly expensive or unavailable? That question matters because awareness changes behavior. And the households that stay calmer are usually not doing more of everything. They are just protecting the basics before pressure arrives. Which brings us to one of the clearest examples of a basic people laugh about until they cannot find it. Hygiene supplies. If 2020 exposed anything, it is how quickly people rediscover the value of ordinary sanitation. Toilet paper became the symbol, but the real lesson was bigger. Hygiene is not cosmetic. It protects health, preserves comfort, and helps maintain a sense of order when everything around you feels unstable. Toilet paper, soap, toothpaste, feminine hygiene products, wet wipes, hand sanitizer, and similar items tend to be treated as automatic purchases, as if stores will simply keep replacing them forever. Then, supply pressure hits, and people realize how dependent everyday routines are on very simple products. This matters physically and mentally. When hygiene breaks down, small irritations become bigger problems. Skin issues, infections, discomfort, and stress all compound quickly. Cleanliness also protects morale. That may sound minor until routines disappear. A household that can stay clean often stays calmer. There is a consumer trap here too. Because these items feel ordinary, people buy them one package at a time and at whatever price happens to be there that week. But paper goods and hygiene products are highly vulnerable to supply chain swings, packaging costs, and panic buying. The control shift is easy to understand. Keep a reserve of the items your household actually uses. Protect paper goods from moisture and pests. Build small travel kits if you ever need to leave quickly. This is not about excess. It is about removing one more point of pressure from a moment that will already have enough of it. And once sanitation is covered, the next category becomes hard to ignore because comfort is one thing, but heat and cooking are another. When people imagine losing power, they often think first about inconvenience. Then night comes, temperatures drop, and cooking becomes difficult. That is when stored fuel stops feeling optional. Propane, butane, lighter fluid, charcoal, and reliable fire-starting tools provide something many people assume will always be available on demand: usable heat. Heat changes everything. It lets you cook food that would otherwise be difficult to use. It helps keep morale from collapsing in cold conditions. It adds a sense of capability when the rest of the environment feels stalled. A household with food but no way to heat, boil, or cook efficiently is not nearly as prepared as it seems. Fuel is also a category where waiting gets expensive fast. Prices shift with season, transport, and energy markets, then spike again when storms approach. The same people who ignore it during calm periods often end up paying a premium once they actually need it. The control shift is straightforward but important. Store fuel safely and legally. Rotate tanks and canisters. Test the equipment before you need it. Keep more than one way to start a flame. Never store propane indoors. This is not an area for improvisation at the last second. And there is a bigger lesson inside this category. A useful item is not just something that lasts. It is something that multiplies the value of other items. Fuel does that. It makes food more usable, water safer, even a dark night more manageable. That same multiplying effect shows up in a place many people underestimate until repetitive meals start wearing them down. Salt and spices. At first glance, salt and spices can seem secondary. In reality, they solve several problems at once. Salt helps with flavor, preservation, and electrolyte balance. Spices help basic foods feel less repetitive. And that matters more than people expect. Food fatigue is real. A pantry can be technically full and still feel exhausting if every meal tastes the same. When that happens, appetite drops, irritability rises, and people stop using what they stored as efficiently as they could. Morale is not a luxury. It affects decision-making, patience, and the ability to stay consistent under pressure. Salt is one of the best values in any pantry. It stores extremely well and has practical uses beyond seasoning. Spices do not last forever at full strength, but they hold up long enough to be worth keeping if you rotate them. And because many seasonings depend on global supply chains, they can become more expensive and less available with surprisingly little warning. The control shift is simple. Store plain salt well and keep a modest range of seasonings you already use. Think in terms of flexibility. Garlic powder, pepper, chili, Italian blends, curry, cumin, whatever matches your cooking habits. The goal is not variety for its own sake. It is keeping basic foods usable over time. Because once meals become repetitive, another small category starts carrying more weight than most people expect: drink mixes and coffee. A warm cup of coffee or tea sounds minor until routines disappear. Then it becomes structure. Familiarity. A small signal to the brain that not everything is out of control. That is why coffee, tea, cocoa, and electrolyte drink mixes deserve more respect than they usually get. Caffeine withdrawal alone can create headaches, irritability, and fogginess at exactly the time clear thinking matters most. Drink mixes also help in another way. When people are under stress, working harder than usual, or dealing with heat, hydration becomes harder to maintain. Electrolyte powders can help make water more effective and more appealing to drink. This category also illustrates how quickly everyday comfort becomes expensive once supply problems show up. Coffee prices have been unstable for reasons that have little to do with the shopper standing in the aisle. Weather, crop pressure, shipping, and global demand all feed into the final price, so what feels like an indulgence today can quietly become a premium item later. The control shift is not complicated. Keep shelf-stable versions. Rotate them into daily life so nothing goes stale. Protect them from moisture and light. Include a few morale boosters your household genuinely values. In a hard week, a familiar drink does more than comfort. It restores rhythm. And rhythm matters because the longer a disruption lasts, the more one hidden issue starts to matter. Not just enough food, but enough nutrition. When diets narrow, nutrient gaps show up faster than many people expect. You may still have enough calories and still feel your energy dip, your focus soften, and your resilience decline. That is why multivitamins quietly earn a place in a long-term plan. They are not a substitute for real food. They are backup support when food variety shrinks. A bottle can cover months of use, costs very little compared with most pantry spending, and helps reduce the risk of running low on nutrients that become harder to get when fresh produce and varied meals are limited. This is especially important in a pressure situation because the effects are subtle at first. People do not always notice a deficiency building in real time. They just feel more tired, more foggy, less steady. In a normal week, that is frustrating. In a disruption, it affects judgment. The control shift is modest but useful. Keep a basic multivitamin in a cool, dry place and rotate it by date. Take it with food when possible. If your household has specific nutritional needs, account for that before you need to. Again, this is the same pattern. Small, low-cost items often protect the larger system. And few items prove that point better than two things so plain most people forget them until they need them immediately: trash bags and duct tape. Very few products offer more flexibility for so little money than heavy-duty trash bags and duct tape. They are not exciting, and that is precisely why they are powerful. They solve ugly, unplanned problems, cover a broken window, line a container, protect gear from rain, create a temporary poncho, manage waste, patch a tear, secure loose material, Reinforce a repair. Improvise around damage until you can do something better. In a disruption, versatility becomes a form of control. Items that can handle 10 different problems are often more valuable than specialized gear that handles only one. Trash bags and duct tape sit squarely in that category. They also reveal another consumer blind spot. People tend to buy them only when a specific project comes up. But shortages do not wait for your project list. Plastic and adhesive products can become harder to find and more expensive, long before most shoppers notice. The control shift is easy. Buy heavy-duty versions, not the weakest option on the shelf. Store them away from heat and direct sun. Keep some duct tape pre-wrapped around another tool if you want a compact backup. These are not glamorous purchases. They are problem solvers. And in difficult moments, problem solvers protect both money and momentum. That leaves one final category, and it changes the whole framework from short-term coverage to longer-term independence. Seeds. Everything up to this point helps you bridge a disruption. Seeds do something different. They point beyond the shelf. Heirloom. Open-pollinated seeds matter because they can become a repeating resource. You plant them, harvest them, save seed, and plant again. That makes them very different from one-time use supplies. This is not about pretending a seed packet solves all food problems. Gardening takes skill, timing, space, and practice. But that is exactly why it matters to think about before pressure arrives. The households with the most control are usually the ones that begin before they feel desperate. Seeds represent a shift from stored food to renewable food. That is a powerful difference. A shelf can run down. The ability to grow even part of your own food creates options that stores cannot fully control for you. The control shift here is to start simple and realistic. Choose varieties that grow well in your area and fit what you actually eat. Beans, tomatoes, peppers, greens, potatoes where practical, and other reliable crops make more sense than fantasy gardens full of unfamiliar plants. Store seeds, cool, dark, and dry. Replace older stock as needed. Most importantly, learn while conditions are calm, and that brings the full pattern into view. The items that protect households most are usually not the ones marketed with the most drama. They are the ones with long shelf life, low waste, repeat use, practical flexibility, and steady value when the system becomes strained. Rice and beans, water treatment, canned protein, medical basics, batteries, hygiene supplies, fuel, salt and spices, coffee and drink mixes, multivitamins, trash bags and duct tape, seeds, different products, same pattern. They are often overlooked because they seem too ordinary. Then the shelves thin out, prices jump, and suddenly people realize the essentials were never ordinary at all. They were the real structure holding everyday life together. That is the deeper advantage of preparing early. Not panic, not perfection. Control. The ability to avoid paying peak prices in a rushed moment. The ability to waste less because what you bought was useful from the start. The ability to move through pressure without feeling like every store trip is a gamble. And if there is one thing worth carrying forward from all of this, it is that preparedness is not really about buying more. It is about seeing more clearly. Seeing which items matter across multiple situations. Seeing how pricing pressure and supply pressure keep repeating. Seeing how the same quiet products keep protecting households again and again. Once you notice that, you stop shopping the same way. You stop mistaking flashy for useful. You stop waiting for urgency to make decisions for you. And little by little, you build a household that feels steadier, calmer, and harder to throw off balance. If you want that kind of control, start with the basics that solve the most problems and build from there.